Welcome to WP-Tonic, episode 117. We got a great panel today, and we're discussing email plugins, strategies, and marketing tips for WordPress. Before I let the panel introduce themselves, we're going to discuss some news stories. But before that, I want to remind you, WP-Tonic is a service that if you're a designer or developer and you're overwhelmed with your legacy clients, they can partner with you to deal with all your legacy clients, kind of take over some of that simple maintenance that you don't have time for. For the WP-Tonic podcast, we encourage you to go to iTunes, leave us a review, and subscribe. Those things really help other people find this in iTunes. And with that, I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves. Starting, we'll go clockwise. Sally.
Hi, my name is Sally Getchin. I actually have sound this week. I do WordPress development and consulting at WPFangirl.com, and I'm the organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup in Oakland, California.
Jackie.
I'm Jackie D'Elia with Jackie D'Elia Design, and I work with clients to help build their brand and drive their engagement. And I am also the host of Rethink.fm, a new WordPress podcast.
Woohoo. And Kim.
I'm Kim Shivler. I teach people how to build WordPress websites and online courses. You can find me at howtobuildononlinecourse.com. I also have a podcast called eCourse Stories, where I interview entrepreneurs who have built online courses. We almost went into pod fade, but we're launching again next week after a little technical difficulty. And congrats on your new one, Jackie.
Thank you.
Now definitely go and subscribe to that one too. And I'm John Locke. I run a small WordPress consultancy in Sacramento called Lockdown Design and help local businesses with their local SEO. Help them get a little bit more out of their WordPress site. And for brick and mortar companies, I help them with their e-commerce. So before we get into the main topic today, there is a pretty big news story going on WP Tavern. They're writing about Headway Theme's future is uncertain amidst financial troubles. So, Sally, what did you make of this?
Well, I had not heard anything about that before reading the article. Just a few days ago, I bought a copy of Headway once, and it looked sort of interesting, but not my thing. So I didn't follow up with it. Just a day or so after that article came out, I got an email from Headway saying, version 4.07 or whatever it is, is available. I went and read this article, and it sounded sort of, and then I went and read that follow-up article that somebody pointed out. It's in our Slack channel, if I can scroll back up to it.
It was Mark at ServerPress.
Right. It was at ServerPress that he said, we actually don't know very much about whether there are real financial troubles or what's going on, because we haven't heard all that much. Some of this is unsubstantiated, and what we know is some people have experienced problems and not had responses, and then later there was a response. The guy who does Headway is also busy doing I think it's Pressmatic. It's a competitor to ServerPress. And it sounds like he might just be a little overwhelmed. And, it'll be kind of interesting to see how this plays out. But it is a real demonstration of the fact that if something starts stirring up and you don't respond immediately, there's going to be a lot of rumor and speculation out there, and it will be much harder to get on top of if you wait than if you say something right away, even if you can't say very much right away to reassure people. And I'd hope we'd have Adam Silver on this morning, because he actually uses Headway, and I wondered if he might know more about it, but he has a very busy schedule and
He's feeling under the weather today.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
So and I agree with what you're saying. The speculation fills the vacuum. Jackie, did you have a chance to look at this story, and what were your thoughts?
I did.
It's okay.
Well,
Okay.
let me roll it back just a second, because
Sure.
I had visited Pressmatic's website a few weeks ago, and looks like my monitor is frozen.
Yeah, you are frozen in an unflattering position, unfortunately.
We can hear you.
That's all right. I have a way to fix that. Let me bow out and I'll come back in.
Sure.
All right.
Absolutely. Okay. Kim, so what were your thoughts on this? Did the tavern, were they out of line and saying like, hey, it's financial trouble, or what were your thoughts on this?
I don't know if it was out of line. I think exactly what Sally said. If you are running selling a premium product and you're not responding right away, that's where the conversation goes at this point. There's been a lot of up in the air, right, on premium themes. Can you still make money with premium themes? We've even talked about that on our panels, right? So I think, so I think even more now with that kind of discussion going on, if you're not quick to respond when people are paying for something, that's the next thing. Oh, well, they're going out of business.
Right. And I don't think the tavern article was super inflammatory. They reported, I think Jackie might be knocking again, hit the...
Okay, I don't see your thing.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it.
All right, Jackie, if you're there, make sure to click the camera. I don't think they were particularly inflammatory. I think they had basically heard from people that there were subcontractors not being paid, which would suggest financial troubles, but they weren't in a position to verify that information. So we don't really know what that situation is.
No, and I think that's it, is when you don't know, kind of just reporting what you think is going on is just naturally what's going to happen. And maybe being silent is not the best thing, but let's talk about the competition article that was on Server Press. I thought that was really poignant, and it said look, hey, we're competitors, but let's get the facts.
Yeah. No, I thought that was very very upstanding of him. First that he said, let's take a look at this. Here's what we actually know. Here's what there are some rumors about, but we haven't verified it. And all right, this person is a competitor, but that's not what we that's not the thing that matters most here. We're not here to diss our competitors in this community. We're here to try to have all of us make better products and succeed.
I did find his pointing out of the difference in the considering yourself software first versus server first interesting as far as a business model, where he was saying he felt like his company had always approached it that they were a service, a premium support service, not a software company. And sometimes if you're focusing more on the themes, et cetera, the sale of that you then come across more software focused, and the level of support is not always in the mindset with that. I found that interesting, the way he pointed it out. And I think he did it without slamming anybody, but it was just an interesting, having worked for both software and support companies, I thought it was an interesting.
Right. I mean, people who are themselves primarily software developers don't tend to want to spend a lot of time on support. They're, people like Pip and Williamson are very unusual in that respect. People who are really developers, they want to build stuff, and they'll fix it if it's broken. But they prefer the company of code to the company of humans. Whereas if you're saying this business is a service, you're much more oriented toward, I need to be interacting with my customers and clients, regularly and frequently.
No, I agree, Jackie.
I'm back. We'll see how long it lasts, right?
Right.
Wow.
Okay, so yeah, my take was, like I said, I had visited Pressmatic's website a few weeks ago. Somebody had sent me a link, or I had read something, and I was curious about it. It looked like a product I might want to use. One of the things that I noticed that their business model was a little different. You just buy a license. It wasn't like an annual subscription or anything. And I worry a little bit about ongoing support or the product aging and just some things like that. So I was a little concerned about that. The other thing that struck me was the site didn't appear to be finished. There wasn't like a terms of service or a privacy policy on there. Just some basic things on a website where you would have e-commerce or you'd be making a purchase. I would have liked to see, and it wasn't clear on the website who owned the product or who were the developers, or nothing. There was no about us or why this product was being developed or anything. That kind of I was a little uneasy about that, and then that kind of ties into the story, because it sounds like not everybody knows who's behind Pressmatic, and maybe there were some, but I agree with you all that communication is the problem here. So stories get all out of hand when you don't respond and you don't answer. And the Pressmatic site is another example of just some poor communication there. So if it was me, I would be looking at really firming that up and making communication a bigger part of how I ran my business. It's just because that to me is, I was thinking about purchasing that, but after those things happened, and things I noticed, I thought, let me wait and just see how things go with this.
Yeah.
So they lost a customer right there.
Right. Now, is Pressmatic actually available for sale at this point, or is it still kind of in process?
As far as I knew, when I was looking at the website, you could purchase version 1.
Yeah.
There's a big button there when you land there. It says Get Pressmatic Now. So you can buy it right then and there on the website.
Right. I guess it is a little awkward trying to figure it at what state of completion to go live with something, and to keep up make sure the website is at least as finished as the product.
Well, to me, like, if you're going to be selling anything, just basic privacy policy and terms of service are really and refund policy, those kind of things.
Those are very important. You may want to write that before other stuff.
Putting a purchase button on your site, even if it's just a beta thing, those things should be there. That's all. That was my only point on that. It's not like the end of the world or anything. It was a cause of concern for me. So I'm assuming it could be a cause of concern for some other people as well. And it just was indicative of the communication issue, which seems to be what everybody here was focusing and saying, it's just a lack of communication. And when you have a void in communication, people tend to fill it with whatever they think.
That's a great point. Communication is really the key to any business. And
right.
When there's, I think we got time for one more news story here. So there's a news story on Pagely, how to create accessible WordPress websites. And this is like pretty cool, because I think WordPress, more than a lot of other platforms, and Daphne Backman says it's totally important. But I think WordPress, more than a lot of platforms, actually tries to make things accessible. So Sally, I know that accessibility. How important is that?
I think it's important, and I'm glad that it's being, that people are starting to learn more about it. We had a meetup about accessibility this last in July. And, it's a thing that I try to increasingly include and think about in projects. I find that I've become much more aware about, things like visual contrast, or, navigating through something by tabs is like, wait, if I hit the tab, I expect it to go to that field, and it's going to that field instead. And, this is annoying for me. It's going to be annoying for other people. We need to be able to fix that in some way. There's a whole lot of stuff that falls under the umbrella of accessibility, but I think, anything you can do is better than not doing anything.
I agree. Kim, why is accessibility important when we're designing websites?
Obviously, to meet the needs of the most viewers, of the most people coming to the site. It was something I have to admit that I paid almost no attention to until WordCamp US last December. I mean, other than up until then, I was paying attention to my alt tags, making sure that those got in there for the readers. But other than that, I was not paying attention to the tabbing through. And which is funny because I started out being complete keyboard before we had mice. So usually I would think I would pay attention to keyboard keystrokes, but I wasn't. And I wasn't paying attention to contrast colors and things like that. And I sat down with the accessibility team the day we did the workday post WordCamp. And it was just like eye-opening at how much wasn't accessible on my site if you were using a screen reader. My tabs actually were okay, even though I hadn't paid attention to them. It was just the theme handled that okay. But the way I was doing things for the screen reader was really, really messed up. So I think that was a big eye-opener, and I've been, like Sally, trying to think of that more as I build out sites, and also starting to incorporate it when I teach solopreneurs how to build sites, that these are things they need to think of and implement when they're building.
No, I agree. I think a lot of times, when we're designing, kind of with other designers in mind, and hey, this looks cool. And some of the most common things that I see are really easily fixable, like small fonts, bad color contrast where things are really unreadable. Forms are a lot of times like not set up to be accessible. Like you mentioned, like the tab index. These are all things that can be done, but I think, a lot of people don't put themselves in the shoes. I think where it changed for me was the San Francisco last WordCamp in 2014. And one of the talks was on accessibility. And, I saw a talk where there's a person that blogs and they can only type like one key at a time. But they blog all the time. And, those are the type of people. And I worked with a guy, when I worked at the factory, who worked alongside me. He was colorblind. And
23%, I think, suffer color blindness. It's extremely common.
Mm-hmm. So accessibility, definitely something to keep in mind. I mean, these are all people that want to use your site as well, and we need to keep them in mind. So anyway, I think we're going to go to our first break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk like a main topic, which is email marketing, plugins, strategies, tips for WordPress. All right, and we'll see you after the break. Okay, we're back from the break, and we're talking email marketing, email plugins, and email strategies for WordPress. So first thing I want to ask the panel, just really quick, why is email marketing important? Do people even still read their email? Why do we even care about email marketing?
For all that we hear that email is dead, and that there are a number of people who don't use it, every year or so somebody does a marketing study, and what do you know? Email marketing is still the most effective. And so, building up a list to mail to is pretty important if you're trying to sell something. I confess I am myself terrible about sending out newsletters. I mean, I've set it up so that if people subscribe on my site, they get my blog posts when I blog. But I was really actually thinking of sending a newsletter regularly to previous clients, to kind of check in, remind them I'm there if they want their site reviewed or redone or anything like that. And I struggle to find the time to blog. I struggle to find the time to do that. But everybody that I've ever heard interviewed about where their sales come from, the big number is from your list.
Jackie, as far as email marketing, do you think it makes a difference? How much of a difference does it make for the businesses that you work with?
It does make a big difference. I think if you are consistent with your email campaign and it meets the expectations of the people who have subscribed to it, it can be very effective. There's also many that are not, and I tend to be a really good observer of that for my own behavior. So when I'm thinking about advising somebody about an email campaign, first thing I'm doing is looking, well, how do I react to email campaigns that I receive? And then which ones do I think, for me, there's like three categories. There's ones where I typically will always read it. I'm engaged in it. So there's a reason for that. And then there's the one that I just ignore, but I don't unsubscribe, right? So that could probably be the most damaging for somebody who's got a mailing list, because it really lowers your engagement level, and your numbers really are low because of that. So you don't have a high open rate or a click-through rate. The last one is the ones where they just annoy you with a very salesy kind of approach, and you immediately unsubscribe, or they send too many in a short period of time. So when you're advising, the ones that I typically really enjoy are the ones that have a schedule that I know about. There's a couple of them that I get, like on a Saturday morning, there's an SEO one that I get, and there's another one called the Use Letter that I like to read that. And I'll typically read those, which is, for me, is unusual behavior because I get a lot of emails and I don't always read them. So I'm constantly analyzing, what's prompting me to open this and want to read this every week? And a lot of it is, it's not salesy. It has valuable information. It's timely. I know when to expect it. I'm not getting, if it's a weekly thing, I'm not getting 12 other emails during the week from them about some new thing that's special or something else that's come up. That happens a lot. And I think if you're going to be advising your clients, they need to decide what they want to be, because, retailers are especially guilty of training everybody to just pay attention to sales. So that's all they use that for now. And it's kind of sad, because there could be so many other opportunities to reach people and market to them and help them. Like, I've never gotten something from Macy's that wasn't, hey, here's some really cool things that, you could be doing with, it's like an article about how-to things or anything. You never get any of those things. You get, this is the big sale, this is the discounts, it's all about that. And so I tend to ignore most of those. So, and I wonder how many other people do as well. And I wonder how really effective that is, or if it's just a big clutter jam up for everybody's email box. But that's kind of my thoughts on it.
That's a really great point. Kim, what are the types of emails that you pay attention to, in your own subscriptions? Do you pay attention to ones that tell you it's email blast, or, what are the ones that you really, actually take time to read?
Similar to Jackie, I have certain ones that I read every week. I know when they're coming in. Everything you said, Jackie, on the consistency, high value, et cetera, that's what all the studies show. That's how you keep people engaged. So I'm the same. Now, I have to admit, because I'm a crazy shopper for certain things like Bed Bath & Beyond. So I don't care if what they're sending me is a sale, because I want to see what I'm going to go spend my coupon on that weekend, because I go there every weekend and buy something pretty much. I'm a junkie. So in those cases, but yeah, a lot of it, if it's just blast of sales information, I will delete it or unsubscribe or ignore it, and it just piles up in my email. I think what you see a lot of people, where you mentioned, Jackie, how it's dangerous if you're you're the people who are getting it, not unsubscribing, and then it's just killing the engagement for that person. What I've been seeing a lot of people lately is, if you stop engaging, they will send you 3 emails that if you don't open and engage, then they drop you from their list. I've been seeing a lot of that lately.
Yeah. You're often,
which is fine,
paying by the subscriber. So
I think having that ability to prune your list based on the engagement of them. If you've got somebody who has been subscribed to your email list for 6 months and has never opened an email from you ever, then you might want to just unsubscribe them.
Yeah, I do. And I find I still, though, get my best engagement from my email. And I'm really bad about the consistency. I've been promising my list I will work to be more consistent. But I do provide such high value that they still tend to open them when I give them, because it's not just the links to my blog, etc. It'll be a complete private lesson just for them with video, maybe 1,000 words, a whole little mini class right in that email. And which is part of why it makes it hard to get it done, once a week or twice a week, because it's a lot there.
No, I think that's a really great point. Consistency, I think in anything, if you're doing anything, whether it's like email marketing, whether it's publishing on YouTube, whether it's releasing a podcast or writing a blog, consistency teaches people to expect to see your message. So that leads into a really great question. Sally, what do you think is the perfect schedule, or is there a perfect schedule for how often you send out emails to build that relationship?
I think it really depends on the kind of content you're sending. So, for instance, 2 of the emails that I read pretty much every single time they send them are the Daily Skim, which is a summary of what's been going on in the news that since I don't really have that much time to follow the news, and it comes out every day, and it's not super long, and I will read it, not necessarily like the second it arrives, but I will generally read it by the end of the day so that I'm not totally out of the loop. And This Week in Genesis, because I want to know what's going on, with the theme framework that I build sites for clients in. So, that's one that's daily and one that's weekly. And it kind of depends on your content. You shouldn't, people have talked about, there's a question I've heard discussed a lot about how long should a podcast be? And it's like, as long as your content is interesting. You shouldn't make it longer this is part of the thing about podcasting. You don't have to make it longer in order to have a consistent show length, because you're not dealing with airtime and that kind of stuff. And you don't have to keep it super short if you're doing something that's really interesting and people are engaged in. But I would not want most of the email newsletters I'm subscribed to come every day, because they accumulate, and I can't, and I'm not too bothered by, okay, if it's, if I'm just really crunched on a project and I don't have time for these things, I will delete them or mark them as read. And then when I have a little more time, I'll start reading. It's not that I want to unsubscribe, it's that I have to prioritize. But I have made a point of, if I realize that I am just never opening these, I'm going to unsubscribe, unclutter my mailbox, give them the space for people who are more interested in what they're saying. So I think you just have to consider what it is that you're, what it is that you're producing, and what kind of schedule is reasonable. And I think it is good to have, if you're thinking about publishing daily, or even setting up the subscribe to my blog, if you're blogging daily, you might want to give people an option to say, get the weekly digest instead, if they find an email every day too overwhelming.
No, I think that's a great point. And Jackie, is weekly email newsletters just right? Should you go more often, a little bit less? What do you think is a good schedule?
The ones that I enjoy are the weekly ones, and the Genesis Guide is a perfect example of one of those. And Nuts and Bolts Media, she has a nice one that comes out every day that just has the latest stuff. I do enjoy that one too, because that one's really short and to the point, and I know what to expect with that one. The weekly ones seem to work very well. For me, I think if you're going to want to have different types of emails that you're going to be sending out, then you should really segment your list and give people that option to either subscribe to, you could have a monthly newsletter and you could say, subscribe to my monthly newsletter, or I send out weekly updates about this, or send me special announcements and things, and give people some control over what they'd like to receive. This way, when you are writing those emails and you're targeting that, you're not just sending it out to everybody who maybe when they signed up was expecting to get an email when you have a new blog post, and they're like, well, what is all this other stuff I'm getting now? And that's a clear scenario where you're going to get people starting to unsubscribe, where what they thought they were going to get and what they're actually receiving. And also go and do an audit on your site and see where you have your sign up forms and what it is you're saying there. If things have changed for you and, 8 months down the road, you're writing about different things and you're doing different things, but you never went back and updated your website as far as what you would be receiving if you subscribe. That's that consistency with that too, is go and update those messages, or go and create some separate lists that give people those options to subscribe to those other things. If you've all of a sudden become a photography buff and you want to start, and you're starting to sprinkle photography things into your blog about some other unrelated site that you're running, then, give people an option to subscribe to that. But don't just change things up on people unexpectedly, I think, is the other thing. And then avoid all of that salesy stuff. It's just, as soon as my radar goes right up immediately. It's like every time I start getting these drip email campaigns, they don't work for me because I know exactly where we're going with this. And it's almost like, could we just fast forward to the end and be done with it, because I'm not going to buy it, or I'm going to unsubscribe. To me, if it's something I'm really interested in, a product I want, I'm going to either buy it. I don't need 10 days of emails to convince me to do something. I think it must work on some people, because I'm not that person. So I have to remember that I'm not a gauge for everybody. How I behave is not the rule for everybody else. So there's obviously people that really get value out of that and actually decide to make a purchase after receiving an email, every day for the next 10 days. It works for them.
I hate long copy sales pages. They just, and it's like, first, just tell me how much it costs already, because, if I can't afford it, it doesn't matter how valuable I find it, I'm not going to buy it. But they still work. People would not create them if they didn't still work. So you need to know something about how your own readers like things. And what they respond to. And, I think the people who are, they have huge lists and they're basically all about sales, they're going to, kind of pick the stuff that's sort of statistically most likely to be effective, do a little A/B testing, and that may be stuff that is offensive to some of us, but their business still does really well out of it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we're all in the techie arena. We've got probably that similar. I'm the same. I want to just tell me what it is and I'll tell you if I'll buy it. The smartest thing a business coach ever said to me is, you're not your target audience. Who's your target audience and how do they buy? And that's what you need to do, because those drips do work for a certain level of the population. The other thing, Jackie, that you pointed out, that as far as making sure you're giving the readers what they want, that's where you want to make sure you're picking a platform that gives you really good list segmentation, right? So the people who are wanting my online course stuff are not necessarily wanting the beginning WordPress stuff. And so it's about being able to make sure you're letting people select that, and then you're using those lists appropriately to make sure you're getting to those. And for example, I do Twitter cards where I actually gather emails. You can actually do that directly from your Twitter page if you know how to build a Twitter card. But those go into a completely separate list, because I figure someone coming to me through Twitter has possibly a different look at it than someone just coming through my website. And I even segregate it further that way, as opposed to just that they were interested in online courses, but that they actually came from Twitter, and try to make it be more Twitter-like even when I communicate with them.
Oh, that's a really good point. Being able to segment and knowing what your customers are signing up for is really important. Daphne in the chat room says, I like weekly subscriptions, but if there's infrequent special editions, I'll read those too. I like the consistency and knowing that I can count on something coming out at the same time each week. And she says that she's also signed up for one reason and then received a totally different type of email. And that's what we want to avoid. We're going to go ahead and go to our second break. And then at the end, we're going to talk, the plugins and, the kind of technical things that we use to collect emails. All right. So we'll see you after the break. Okay, we're back. I'm talking with the panel, Sally Getch, Kim Shivler, and Jackie D'Elia. I want to ask Sally, what kind of email services have you used in the past? You used MailChimp, Constant Contact, Aweber. What's your experiences with that?
I have a deep dislike for Constant Contact, but some of my clients use it, and I like MailChimp pretty well. It's not sufficient for everybody, but if you're one of those people like me who has a list of fewer than 100 people, it's a pretty good deal. I've worked occasionally in the past with Aweber and a couple of the others. I find with most people it's MailChimp, it's Constant Contact, or it's something really niche. Like I do a website for a yoga teacher, and she uses an email service called Namaste Light, which I had never heard of prior to that. The problem with things like that is that there tend to be fewer integrations, and it may be a little trickier to get a decent form that isn't their horrible. I hate attempting to fix the styles on forms that you've copied and pasted the code from one of these services. It's just appalling. So what I try to do is sometimes on a Genesis site, the eNews extended plugin will work all right, and very often I just use Gravity Forms. I mean, I had a situation with a client who had a fairly large and segmented list. So he wanted to ask extra questions in order to determine which list to put people on, and also gather quite a bit of other information. So I built the form in Gravity Forms, and it batches it over to his MailChimp. He was in the process of switching from Constant Contact to MailChimp when I did his website. And then on a political campaign site that I was looking at, I ended up signing the client up with SendGrid and using the MailPoet plugin, because with SendGrid, you get something like a 12,000 person list for free, and you can do a bunch of things. It goes, you create the post within WordPress, you create the newsletter, but it sends it out not through your WP mail function, which would be appalling, but through SendGrid, and you can set SendGrid up so that it matches your domain, and it's good for validation and stuff. So that's a nice option. There are a lot of tools out there, and if you are somebody who develops sites, you're going to encounter a number of them. If you are somebody who is a business person just starting out with having a website and a mailing list, I think MailChimp is a pretty good place to start.
Totally. Jackie, what kind of services have you used, and what do you find is appropriate for different styles of businesses?
Well, a lot of it is basically what Sally just said. So I agree. I use MailChimp for my own purposes, and I have heard of ConvertKit. I know Jonathan was mentioning that on there, and I have looked at it. I haven't decided if it'd be something that would be right for me to switch to for what my needs are. MailChimp works for me because it gives me the segmentation of my list, and I use Genesis eNews Extender primarily with client sites for those basic email signups where you just want to sign up for their newsletter, things like that. That works out really well. I've used Gravity Forms as well to move things over into MailChimp. I used Constant Contact maybe 7 or 8 years ago for my e-commerce business. I think that was probably one of the really the only things. Aweber was around, but there wasn't very much else besides Constant Contact to use. The biggest complaint that I've got out of all of those things is the templates and everything. It is very difficult to work in quickly and efficiently. I find it's very slow. I think it's an obstacle to getting content out a lot of times. And what I've started to do now is to write my content up in a completely separate text file and not spend so much time in like a MailChimp editor to write out all of this content. And because just formatting the images and all of the things like that, it's like building a page in WordPress, it's just
but worse, because email styling is so limited and so inconsistent between mail clients.
Yes. So it is that is the part that I think is the obstacle, that if somebody really smart is thinking, well, how can I figure out a way to maybe let you put this somewhere else and feed that into that might be a great service to offer along those lines. So I use Genesis eNews Extender. I've used Gravity Forms for that. Those are kind of the basic things. I wouldn't recommend Constant Contact. I see some people use Mad Mimi. I've seen some other ones that, and this ConvertKit is another one that's been mentioned a lot. I know Chris Lemma had written a post not too long ago about it, and some folks I know in the Genesis community are trying it. So I'm interested to hear what the differences are. And I'm also interested to see is it actually easier to use. I think that for me is going to be what would be a draw for me is things. And MailChimp is fairly easy to use as far as setting it up. And, they've got a nice little process. They take you through step 1, step 2, step 3 to get something out. So that works fine. I just think the whole visual designing elements they've got a ways to go on that. It's like, they're expecting people to write HTML in there. And if you want your client in there working on building, it's just not feasible. I can do it because I know how to write HTML and I prefer to work that way. So for me, I'm okay with it, but I can see where that would be challenging for people to get things formatted, lined up properly. I get clients ask me all the time, well, I can't get the header image in there. It's not lining up properly. And I think they could do a better job on that. A lot of times, though, I have to say, the emails that I enjoy reading are the ones that are not so flashy with a bunch of images and a bunch of design elements in it, but it's some nicely formatted text that's large enough that I can read it and broken up enough where I can scan it. Those are things you want to be thinking about when you're doing a newsletter like that. And I don't know if we're talking about those things, but I mean, just formatting things so that it's digestible for people. Because anybody who gets an email, they scan. That's what we're doing when we open it up, we're scanning it. So if you lay it out so that it's optimal for people to scan it and figure out what areas they do want to read about, use good headings, break things up, small paragraphs. Those are things that would help with the readability of an email campaign.
Totally. Kim.
Agreed. I started with MailChimp. The challenge for me with MailChimp was, in order to do any of the drips, and I do drip courses, it moved you into a paid-for plan. And once you went into a paid-for plan, some of the other premium ones are easier to use, more functional, have better templates, etc. So that's when I started playing in the market, and I used ActiveCampaign and I used ConvertKit, and I tried Infusionsoft, but we won't go there. And because that was just way more than what I needed, and it's not the kind of platform I wanted. So I ended up on GetResponse because it was gave me more options and pretty easy templates. It was the easiest templates I had found for when I want to use the templates that they have. And yet the price was not as high as it was still a little fairer price than some of the ActiveCampaigns and ConvertKits. Now I do know though, and so ActiveCampaign just sent me something that they just did a big overhaul, and they have a whole bunch of new, what they say, friendly templates and all. So perhaps I just don't know what they've offered now. But that's where I set on that, why I ended up with GetResponse. I have had a few people say they quit using it because they were having trouble with emails getting through. I haven't had that issue yet. And then the same as everybody else, sending out of my sites, I use SendGrid for that. I used to use SendGrid for everything, and I think that they're, as a email marketing, they're not there yet. They need to do some work. But as the SMTP portion, I've had a really good success with them setting up both my own sites and back when I did client sites, as far as particularly shopping carts, et cetera, making sure those mails got through.
Yeah, I mean, what they call SendGrid is that it's for, quote, transactional emails. So, if you have noticed that you're having trouble with people getting their WooCommerce receipts, or, if somebody sends a password change request, or, then there's an issue where you need to use, a real SMTP server and not the WP mail function.
No, that's a really good point.
Yes, and Jonathan is just saying that his MailRite tool is based on SendGrid.
Yeah, that is an important thing
right.
when you're building out a site, and is make sure you test all of those things out. I mean, that's typically what I have clients do is, go ahead, fill out forms, make sure you're getting your emails, make sure you're getting your notifications, and don't, use different domain emails when you're submitting things, and test it out so that that it's working. Because the SMTP is important. MailGun's another one I think you can use on there. I actually, on mine, since I use Google apps for work, so Google has one, I think it's a Gmail SMTP, but that one syncs to my Google, and I can use Google to send out my transactional emails for my site. And that works for me, and it's free. So that's great.
Yes. Jonathan is asking about WordPress plugins that use the host-provided email system. There are a few of them, I think. It's like the old Subscribe To plugin and a few others. And you can. I think you can use MailPoet with your WP Mail function, but they don't recommend it at all. They tell you, use something like SendGrid.
And that's when I used MailPoet, I used SendGrid, but I don't know about the ones that use the hosting provided. I've never used those.
Right. And I think maybe we should let Jonathan come in here and talk, because trying to interpret this is, I can switch off here and you have Jonathan talk to you about email. He knows more about it than I do.
Yeah, I'll jump out because I haven't. Oh, there goes Sally. I would have jumped.
One thing I would say, there was a good point that we were bringing up with the SMTP. A lot of times, some of the and a lot of people don't realize this, like, typical business owners. WordPress uses a function called WP Mail to send out the mail from the server. Sometimes you have problems sending that out. That's when you have to use like SMTP. And there's different plugins that will help you with that. Postman, Easy, I think it's like Easy WordPress SMPT. So there are different ones. Basically, like you connect to your server and it'll send it out on a port. Generally, they can be a pain to configure. Sometimes they're pretty straightforward. Sometimes it's a pain. But that ensures that everybody's getting your email. Definitely, I wanted to save a little bit of time to talk. Just sign up.
Jonathan wants to come in the room.
I'm trying to add him. I can't add him. I'm waiting for him to join. Anyway.
Yes, he needs to hit the accept button now, but
something. Anyway, but yeah, basically, what do you guys use for, signups? Do you use something like Thrive Leads, something like Opt-in Monster?
I use Opt-in Monster.
Opt-in Monster. That's a good choice. Have you seen like the welcome mat with SumoMe?
I've seen it, but I haven't tried it yet. I've tried their heat maps and others, but I haven't tried any of their opt-in stuff yet.
A lot of people swear by that. It's basically like when you first load a page, it will it'll take up the full screen. It'll be like an opt-in form at the top of the page. And then
Yeah.
if you scroll down, like you get the site again. First few times I saw this, it was like really confusing. It's like
it was quite jarring. Lots of people use it now, so I've come to expect it, but I find it sort of annoying. I've followed a link to your website. I've maybe never heard of you. I haven't read your article, and the first thing you're asking me to do is subscribe to something that I don't know whether I want yet. I think that the exit pop-ups make more sense in terms of, okay, you've read something, and if you get to the end of the post, or at least sort of into the middle of the post before you're being prompted to subscribe for more, you're in a better position to make a decision.
Yeah, I'm going to invite Jackie back in because I don't know what's going on with Jonathan.
I'm the same, Sally. I love the exit. And that's the one thing I really like with Opt-in Monster. There's certain things I don't like about them. I did not like the big changes they made last year, but I love the exit because it's a chance to say, hey, even if it's not opt into my newsletter, it's like, you were here. Is there something I can help you with? Was there something missing? Was there something you'd like more of? And it gives you a chance to open up that connection without hitting them in the face initially. I feel the same.
No, I definitely think that exit intent, like pop-ups, that's the place to do it. What are your thoughts on this, Jackie?
I totally agree. I use Opt-in Monster, and that's the one part that I like. And I actually take it a little further. You can configure it so that it only pops up maybe after the second or third page that they've read, or the third article that they've gone through. So you basically, for me, I'm trying to time it where somebody has shown interest in what I'm doing on the site or what I wrote, and maybe is on the second post or read another article and have gotten more than halfway down the page or something like that, so that you can gauge whether or not you're really being intrusive or you're actually maybe being helpful at that point when saying, hey, if you'd like to receive these posts when they're released, you can sign up right here. That's way better than the annoying, as soon as you land on the page, it blackens, and then you get a pop-up thing in the middle that asks you to subscribe. And of course, like Sally was saying, I haven't even read anything yet. Or was it Kim that said that? I don't remember, but one of y'all said that it's like, you haven't even read anything yet. You don't know if you want to subscribe. You don't even know if you have an interest in this website. So I think that's placing it with the exit intent, and then for whatever metrics that you want. If you want to wait and see if they've looked at a couple of pages before you do it, that's perfectly fine, and it doesn't do it again for 30 days. I like those features. It's more user friendly.
Yes, Jonathan is back in his other identity.
Okay, what's his other identity?
Join.
I don't see him.
I'll pop out.
MailRite, there he is.
MailRite.
Okay, somebody build. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So people who are like, Opt-in Monster is really good because it gives you a lot of control. If you're a subscriber to Elegant Themes, you also get access to their Bloom plugin, which allows you to do the various like pop-up forms with various animations, and you can put them like all sorts of different places. I think it's really important to, not so much necessarily like having a pop-up, but like having a compelling lead, and definitely like being strategic about where, those opt-in forms show up. Jonathan.
Yes. Yes. Now that you're finally here, Jonathan. You were desperate to tell us something.
I've lost track now. Dealing with.
Well, we were talking about the different subscription forms and plugins. I'll just tell you like what I use. I have used like lead in, which is a little thing that pops up at the bottom, corner of the page. You see that on different sites. Brennan Dunn has used it in the past. Curtis McHale still uses it. I've used it before. I think right now I'm just using it's MailChimp for WordPress plugin, and then just the embedded form directly from MailChimp.
Well, it's a bit like what Angie, folks, and Nick's episode before this one, folks. We've got Angie on the show, and she was talking about that people don't have enough collection points on their website. Obviously, you've got to get enough traffic to make this worth, but just having a subscribed area on your sidebar, and even just having one form of pop-up isn't enough. She was saying you need at least 7 different methodologies for collecting email.
Right. There was a study done by, I can't remember if it was coded in WP or somebody else, but where they figured out sort of like, how many different places they put their email subscription forms, and what ended up working for them, and it was to have the forms in an awful lot of places. I mean, I managed to do it so that it wasn't like completely annoying, but sort of, it's like, before the content, next to the content, in the middle of the content, after the content, the pop-up when you're trying to leave, and that it does seem that, super saturation was necessary. I wonder if they're just wearing people out, that eventually they just give up and say, fine, I'll subscribe, shut up,
There
go
was
away.
like a parody website that somebody put together not that long ago. I can't think of the URL off the top of my head, but it was like that. It was like literally every single, it's like, oh, you should, have you signed up to my thing now? It'd like be a pop-up. You'd scroll a little farther, it'd be in the content, and like stuff flying in, like just is crazy. And it was just trying to make a point of, we're so focused on getting the sign up, but I think, only half of the people actually know what to do with it once they get those people signed up.
It's like that Seinfeld episode where he goes, you know how to take the reservation, but you don't know how to hold the reservation. So the idea is, yeah, you get these people to sign up, but do they stay? Are you writing content to keep them there? Are you providing what it is you said you were going to do? So, and then, yeah, I'd like to see a study where they measure, how many different ways you've got people to sign up on your site. And then how does that compare to the metric of what is your churn rate on your list too? So that's what I would like to see, is if adding more adds more people to your list and your churn rate isn't going up, then great. I mean, what's your overall percentage increase in your list happening over month after month using that strategy?
Yep. One last thing before we wrap up the podcast part of the show. Kim in the chat room, Kim Schiller, she was just here, said the study I read had multiple spots because the key was different lead magnets. For example, some people had one on each blog post that had a lead magnet specific to the topic. And I think that's a great point. The key isn't necessarily different spots. It's like having different lead magnets. And that there was something, it's like if you can have a specific lead magnet keyed to the content on that specific page, then people are already interested in what's on that page. And they're like, okay, here's more. Say if you have a page on SEO, here's an offer around SEO. If you have a page on development, here's, offer around development, just examples like that. So anyway, what we're going to do, we're going to wrap up the podcast part of the show. And there's more, the content continues on YouTube. You can definitely subscribe. Just search WP-Tonic and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to reach 100 subscribers, so go ahead and do that. And if you want to also find these episodes on WP-Tonic.com, that would be awesome. And leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe. So panel, Sally, how do we find you?
You can find me at WPFangirl.com, or I am at Sally Getch on Twitter and a number of other places.
Very nice. Jackie, how do we find you?
You can find me at JackieDelia.com and on Twitter at JDelia.
Jonathan?
Oh, you can get me at WP-Tonic or at John, or my Twitter tag is at Jonathan Denwood.
I'm going to go ahead and just give props to Kim really quick. I know that you can find her website, whiteglovewebtraining.com, and her Twitter handle is Kim Shivler. And you can find me. My Twitter handle is lockdown_, and my website's lockdowndesign.com. We're going to wrap up the podcast. Remember, you can catch the extras on YouTube and on the website. All right. Okay.
Well, it doesn't really matter because I stopped the recording about 10 minutes ago when it disappeared.
I'm still recording.
All right, great. So you
Good.
stop your audio recording and we can bun that.
Okay, that's cool. I think I'm missing the first minute or so, so like you might have to put them together. But anyway, I'll export this. So the YouTube. So for the YouTube portion, for our loyal YouTube listeners here,
Yes.
Jonathan, take the wheel here for a minute. And
yeah, I think it's been a fascinating conversation because you got different, like most things, you're dealing with a number of different areas that first of all, you got to get enough traffic to the website to make it worth, unless it's a very, very specialized audience. There's a certain traffic, or you need a certain traffic to make it worthwhile to do all this. And then you got the whole thing of what you're going to be offering. Is it appropriate? Will we get people to sign up? How many times are you touching them as they go through the website? As Angie pointed out, it's probably not enough. Now in 2016, you are probably going to need something like OptiMonster, ConvertKit, one of these purpose if you're going to be really serious about building up a subscription to your newsletter. And then you've got all the things Jackie and Sally and Kim have talked about what you're going to be producing in that newsletter. So there's quite a few elements now to actually building up a decent list linked to your website, isn't it, John?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, you got to have the right offer, you got to have the traffic, and then you got to have like the targeted traffic, and then you've got to have enough opportunities for them to sign up.
And because this has got a lot more complicated, if you're looking to get a result, a lot of people just can't be bothered. And a lot of people say that email marketing isn't effective. But then when you look at really effective, hardcore online marketers, like the crowd that Angie works at, OptiMonster, and you look at other statistics based on what kind of result you can obtain from a quality list rather than from social media, you realise that if you're really serious about getting a business objective on a website, that you do really need to build up a list.
There's not really any way around that. It depends partly on what you do. If you have the sort of if you sell the sort of product where if you sell or service where if you get 5 new customers in a year, you're set. Then you can reach a small list as long as it's the appropriate people. But for a lot of things, and certainly if you're selling something that's mostly a commodity like a plugin or a theme, you've got to reach a pretty wide audience.
No, definitely, you got to have volume. If you're selling something like a plugin, a theme, or if you're doing some sort of national sales, you do have to have a wide audience. So Jackie, the strategies for getting people to sign up, but what's worked for you?
Content is really, I think that's the whole key to everything. I mean, I realize, yes, if you're selling a product and you are, you're trying to sell a plugin, those are different things. But if you write good content, you could be horrible at creating, sign up things and other stuff, and people will still sign up for it if they believe that they're going to get value from what it is that you're sharing. So I think that really helps. Having all the other stuff really is just like a bonus. I mean, it really makes it work. And but I think writing good content is really crucial and something that is adding value for people. So like I was saying, those newsletters that I get every week that I enjoy, they have value in them. I find things in there that I want to use or that I'll make notes about. And so for me, that is adding value for that. And I think I'd very quickly unsubscribe if they were not producing the content.
No, I think that's a great point. And that's another thing too. If people are only receiving like an email once in a blue moon, they're going to unsubscribe because they're going to forget that they even subscribe to you.
Yeah, I think it's into two kind of separate areas, and probably an area that we're probably going to discuss in a future show is, how do you get people to come to your website? And people say, oh, it's natural SEO, and they're right, but that's a bit, there's a bit more to that statement than just saying natural SEO. That's kind of that, you've got to go into a bit more detail than that, really. And a lot of people, what we've discussed, if you're, like I say, unless you've got a very, very specialized audience, if you can't get the traffic to a certain level, it's probably not worthwhile. You really need to concentrate on that first before going into all the things that have been discussed during this show, because it's probably, you really got to concentrate on getting a certain traffic level, really. I don't know if the other panelists agree on that.
Right. I mean, it's fine to, I think you should, if you write a blog, you should give people the opportunity to subscribe to it by email, even if you don't have a large following. Then, but if you're really thinking about a mailing list as a marketing tool, you need to have people there. And so, yeah, you need to have the following either on your actual website or, on Twitter, if you're using Twitter cards to get people to sign up the way Kim does, or, on Facebook, or on, you need your platform out there. You need people that you can reach and to sign them up and to bring them to your website. And eventually, if you're selling the stuff through your website, you're going to want to bring them from wherever it is that you're finding them back to your website.
No, definitely. I think people do forget that. They get so wrapped up in like, nobody's signing up. And it's like, but hardly anyone's coming to your site. Kim Shivler also wanted to say from the chat room, when you don't send for a while, you're lucky if they only just unsubscribe, because that's how you get reported as spam and you may get your email account canceled. One thing, and she says, one thing we didn't discuss, running our list offline, not just when traffic comes to our site. She says, when I teach and speak live, I always have a download to help bring them in. That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, and I've known lots of speakers who, they will say at the end of their talk, if you'd like to be on my mailing list, write your email on the back of a card or something, or give me a business card and write list on the back of it so that I know to put you on my email list. So, there are more ways to get people on your list than just the sign up forms that are on your website.
Taking notes.
I do see a lot of that, Sally, but I'm thinking, and I totally agree with you, but I also feel in 2016, you're just going to have to do something a bit better. Like, you're going to have to say, well, I've got the full set of notes here, but I've actually got another 20 minutes of additional high quality information. And if you you really, really need to go to the website to this shortened URL, and you'll be able to download this extra material with the actual materials that I've provided through this presentation. What do you think? What do you think, Sally?
I think you're I think you're right there, and certainly for people to say, you can get my slides or get my notes or get my get something extra, which is pretty much what you're often doing on the website itself, is sign up and get 10 tips for whatever, or a free download of this.
Yeah, well, I think also you need to really go to some of the best hardcore online marketers and go to ConvertKit, go to Campaign Monster and really read their blog and their advice. And I'm probably as guilty as that, and that's what I propose to do in the next couple of weeks, and really refresh myself with the latest from these experts, from these people that really understand what is required. And then you really need to do some studying and then apply it to your own site. And really going to those resources is probably where you're going to find the most up-to-date, most active kind of information to guide you. That's what I would advise somebody if they're going to go down this road. And in 2016, I just think you're just going to have to up your game, because it's just getting more and more and more competitive to get people's attention, and there's just more and more content. So the only way you're going to do it is by just getting better at it and more knowledgeable.
Have you done any A/B testing on your mailing list or your subscribe forms?
No, I'll give some insights actually, because it might be of interest. Actually getting people to sign up on the WP-Tonic site has been an utter disaster. I've tried various methodologies, but I am going to get a lot more real. One of the problems there is is increasing, and hopefully it will increase more, is the actual traffic numbers to the WP-Tonic have recently got a lot better, but needs a lot more work on it. And me and John have got ideas in the next 6 months to improve that situation. I do have a very large mailing list though, but I got that. It's very regional. It's based in Northern Nevada, and it was based on one-to-one meetings, and it's over 3,000 people. And on average, I get over 600 of those people open a monthly email that I send. And I get an opening rate between 17 and 25% on average. And then I get a click-through rate of only 2 to 5%, which I was really disappointed. But when I studied, that's pretty good, actually. So it really shows you the size of the email list that you really need, unless you're in a very, very specialized area, folks, the size of the email list that you need to be actively building up. Because if you expect to, when you look at the actual click-through rate, to a special offer or to some action, to something that you want to obtain through all that work you're doing through content production, you need to build that list up considerably.
Yeah, well, it's I remember that direct mail expects something like a 1% or 0.5% or something like that return, and that stuff costs a chunk of change to send out mailers to physical places. You've got to get them printed, you got to pay for postage, all of that sort of thing, and you have a tiny
a complete ecological waste, if you ask me.
Well, I just think I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's just really wasteful. It really is. I wish there was a better way to do it.
Well, it works, Jackie. It still works.
I know it does. It won't be that way forever. I know.
Well, actually, I think it will, Jackie, because fundamentally a lot of people have stopped doing it, and because a lot of people have stopped doing it with the right mailing campaign, because the inbox is less filled.
Are you talking about physical mailboxes, or are you talking about? I'm talking, because I was talking about physical ones. I think it's just, but for the actual return on that, if it's so small, and the amount of resources it takes to produce that and distribute it. It just seems like
right. You have to be in a situation where 1% or 0.5%
it just seems like that's a perfect rethink for somebody to figure out a way to rethink that and just say, you know what, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, but I'm.
Right. Well, and that is partly why people started writing email newsletters, but there are still folks who are rarely, if ever, online. And that's really who the physical mailings tend to be directed to.
Well, it's not only that,
these days.
Sally, it's also the laws on spam. Fundamentally, you can send out a physical flyer to a purpose-built list. And it's going to be horrendous when you actually look at the numbers and costs. But at least you can get some new people into the system. With the spam laws, unless you're chosen to totally disregard them, and you're going to take the consequence, the legal and some of the other consequences, and you're just going to go for it. It's against the law just to do outreach to people that haven't given permission to join your list. So we are dealing with in marketing terms, two slightly different scenarios, but they do regularly overlap one another, put it that way. It don't make any sense, or am I blabbing, John?
No, you're not blabbing.
Speaking of that, Blab is gone today, right? We didn't talk about that, or did you all while I was missing from
No, we never did.
No, we didn't talk about it. It's enough of a shock to potentially.
Yes, they shut it down today.
The show.
They shut it.
It's done. It is dead.
They shut it down.
It's gone. They're working on a new product that is going to be an always active service. I don't know exactly what that means. I didn't read the.
They might not.
It's gone. It's
I think
done. Everybody who got Blab in their domain names and everything, well, sadly, you're done with all of that.
Yeah, so much for the wizard and his plan to build a business on Blab.
Well, he's going to have to move.
I'm not going to say anything, Sally. Sometimes you how long was you living in England, Sally? I'm sure it was 4 years. I'm sure it wasn't 8 years. Because you're a bit of a beast, you know.
Yeah.
But I do see where you're coming from.
If you look at the Medium piece that they wrote, if you read between the lines, it kind of sounds like their VC investors wanted them to go a different direction than they wanted to go, and so they pulled the plug. That's kind of what I got out of it. You know, maybe it's a different story, but that's what it sounded like to me. But yeah, it was a shock. I didn't expect that. And so I guess, hey, Jonathan, I guess we moved platforms at the right time.
And I don't know we're going to handle what happened today, but maybe that had some consequences. Maybe they got a lot more people hitting.
They said, like, hey, man, WP-Tonic left, man. We might as well just shut it down.
It was obvious, wasn't it? You know, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know
without
I don't know what Uncle
continue.
Tucker and Bridget are going to do.
No, they're already on Fire Talk.
Oh, they're.
Yep.
Well, yes, they did seem to quite admire the interface here, so I think they were already moving, and you know, at least there are other options like this, but yeah, that's.
So I wonder what will be like the replacement focus. You know, so is it going to be Fire Talk? Is it going to be more Google Hangouts? Is it going to be, you know, I wonder what will fill the void.
Right. I mean, I don't know enough about FireTalk to have any sense of you know, where their future is going and what their business model is. And, you know, that's the thing about you use something new. It may or may not last. But, you know, if nothing else, we do always have the Google Hangouts to go back to.
I think we better wrap this up, folks, because I think FireTalk is going to kick us out pretty soon. Anyway, we're going to hit the 9 minutes.
You got about 6 minutes, Dougie Fresh.
We need to have a quick chat on Skype after this.
I can tell we're the same age, John.
We need to have a quick chat on Skype after this, John. But this ends the show, and I'm going to let my beloved co-host, you know, try and get them to. Or shall I do it? Shall I finish it off, John, or do you want to?
Finish him. Do it.
Finish it. Well, please, folks, if you're watching this, you're probably on the website or on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are actively growing that quite considerably recently because we've publicized it. Another thing you should listen to. And to go to the website, we're going to be placing the FireTalk iframe on a specific page, and please subscribe to iTunes, because that really helps as well, folks. And if you do feel like it, give us a review, because that really does help as well. And become a bit of it's a bit of a cliche, folks, but I do feel that we are building a bit of a tribe. Maniacs, all of them, but there we go, all WordPress junkies, crazy online marketer types, but you know, it's great fun. So join us next time, folks. Bye. Peace.
Bye.
Same bad time.
See ya.
Same bad channel.
I'll see you on Skype in a minute, John.
See you in a minute.
Bye, Sally.